What's going on, everyone? It's Phil from Earth Nails and Tails, and I just finished creating this compost pile behind me, and today I'm going to show you everything I'm doing and looking for when I'm maintaining my hot compost pile in order to create that beautiful black gold as fast as possible. I've been creating my own compost for a few years now, and I love to be able to recycle my garden and yard and kitchen waste and create an amazing garden amendment that's arguably the best that you can get your hands on. I prefer to make large batches of compost using the hot composting process, which means that you do have to gather up quite a bit of material. The major benefit to hot composting is that you can make compost faster, and there's a greater chance that you're going to kill harmful pathogens and weed seeds along the way. As I maintain my hot compost pile, I'm specifically following the guidelines for creating organic compost in the United States. And these guidelines are relatively straightforward. Over the course of 15 days, you need to maintain your compost at a temperature of 131 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit and turn your compost pile 5 times within that 15-day period. These guidelines are very important for various reasons, so let's get into flipping our compost a few times and we'll break all this information down. And first, let's talk about temperature. A compost pile goes through various stages throughout the whole process at which different forms of biological life become more dominant. Initially, 24 to 48 hours after you create your compost pile, you should really start to see those temperatures heat up, and this is an indication that the microbial life required to break down or compost all the materials in your pile are active and doing work. If you haven't seen this occur, give your compost pile another day to see what happens. But likely there was some sort of imbalance during the creation of the compost pile. And if this happens, don't get frustrated. Creating a compost pile is a science, and it does require some practice. If this is one of the first times that you've created compost, I highly recommend checking out our original Intro to Organic Composting episode 1, where I go into the details of how to make the proper and balanced compost pile. But assuming that you do see your temperatures heat up within that first 1 to 2 days, this is where the thermophilic or heat-loving bacteria really start to take over. These thermophilic bacteria are the real powerhouses of the compost pile and are extremely effective at breaking down those raw materials. Studies at Cornell University have also shown that once your compost pile temperatures go above 131 degrees Fahrenheit, the harmful pathogens to you as well as your plants are destroyed, which is another reason why maintaining those high temperatures is so important. Now, here's another important fact to note. Once your compost pile temperature rises and approaches 160 degrees Fahrenheit, the bacteria that are really effective at breaking down your compost pile start to die off, and dramatically. So a good way to maintain your compost pile is when those temperatures reach 160 degrees Fahrenheit, it's time to turn your compost. But Phil, what if my compost pile doesn't reach 160 degrees? Well, if you're still maintaining that organic composting band, that's absolutely amazing, because those thermophilic bacteria are absolutely loving that compost pile. But remember, we need to turn that compost 5 times in a 15-day period. So if it's been about 3 days, regardless of where the temperature is at, it's time to turn your compost. So what's with all the turning, and why is it so important? Well, turning a compost pile is necessary by the USA Organic Composting Guidelines, and it provides you the opportunity to assess your pile for its overall health during the process. In regards to the guidelines for organic composting, turning the pile is necessary because it ensures that all of the materials used to create the pile are at some point or another exposed to the pathogen-killing temperatures, which makes it safe for use. What we want as home gardeners is a compost that we can create relatively quickly and is going to be full of beneficial nutrients and life that we can add into our soil. Turning the pile is what allows you to observe how the pile as a whole is looking and to manage it to help the microbes perform at their best. Each time I turn my pile, I pull all of the materials out of the existing bin, and I'm sure to take the larger bits of materials that haven't nearly been broken down as much and incorporate them into the center of the pile where the microbes are going to be the most active. Incorporating parts of the pile that are on the outside to the inside and vice versa will ensure that those materials are working to break down the pile as evenly as possible. Not only are you mixing the pile to evenly move around materials, but you're also monitoring a few other factors that are extremely important to make quality compost. You are a steward of the microbes, and you need to take care of them by managing the amount of air and moisture inside of your compost pile. Just like us, our compost creating microbes need air, water, and food in order to create compost. The food comes from all of the ingredients that we incorporated in our pile when we created it. Now it's our job to maintain the proper amounts of air and water for them. Each time we turn the pile, we are adding air for our oxygen-loving microbes. And it's best practice to shake or shift the materials into the new pile to ensure every little bit of material is able to become refreshed. Similarly, during this time, we need to be observing for smells and the feel of the compost pile itself. If you smell a foul odor or ammonia, it's likely that there are pockets of your pile that have become anaerobic or lacking oxygen. And you want to be sure to really stir things up so that way you can incorporate air into those parts of the pile. This can also be an indication that there was too much nitrogen added to the pile initially, but after I do my first turn or two, I like to then reanalyze for this ammonia smell, because it's very typical that a compost pile could be very hot or having excess nitrogen in the beginning, but those microbes quickly consume it in order to break down the carbon in the compost pile as quickly as possible. So if you are still smelling these ammonia type smells after the third or fourth turn, then I would most likely consider adding in a little bit of carbon just to balance out that nitrogen. Now, in regards to moisture, it's probably one of the most important and overlooked factors in creating the most efficient compost pile that you can. What you want is your compost pile to have a consistency of a wrung out sponge. So not too wet and not too dry, just right. So grab a hold of your compost pile. Does it feel soggy and wet, or does it feel dry and crumbly? Well, we need to create that fine balance so our compost is moist but not wet. If you can achieve this, you'll create an environment that your aerobic and thermophilic microbes absolutely love, and you will see those microbes break down your compost pile in a matter of weeks instead of months. So when you're creating your compost and maintaining your compost, you really want to be sure to get your hands dirty, get your hands in that pile of compost, and really analyze what is happening inside of that pile. Don't be afraid to add a little bit of water if you think your compost pile is too dry. They need this fine balance of air and water, and as long as you're properly mixing this pile over the course of that 15 days, that moisture will most likely get incorporated throughout the pile, and the microbes are absolutely going to love it. I know that was quite a bit of information, especially if you're hearing about these things for the very first time. So feel free to let this all sink in and come back to this video throughout your composting journey. But now that our 15 days are up of our active composting period, what do? Well, I'm going to tell you that your compost is not done quite yet. After this active 15-day period, it's time to allow your compost to cure. And during this long curing process is when your compost really becomes the amendment that we all know and love. And luckily for you, this is also a time of rest. After those 15 days of eating and working, those thermophilic microbes are probably starting to run out of food if they haven't already. And you're going to see the indication of them dying off by that compost pile temperature lowering pretty significantly. This is just another stage of the composting process, where as the temperatures lower, different forms of microbial life come in, like fungi and other forms of cooler temperature loving bacteria really start to colonize that compost pile and break down those bigger and woodier pieces that those thermophilic microbes weren't able to consume. Other larger organisms such as worms and bugs are also going to come in and populate that pile and help do the work of the fungi and those cooler temperature loving bacteria. And as I hinted at, the process of curing your compost takes much longer than the 15-day active period, and can take upwards of 12 weeks or more depending on the time of year and your local temperatures. But during this time, it's best to be patient and let the compost break down and let all of those bigger microbes do the work, because it could be very detrimental to your garden if you take unfinished and uncured compost and apply it to your crops. After about 12 weeks of waiting, I go back out and I analyze my compost pile with one last turn. And as I'm turning it, I'm looking at all of the beneficial life that is now inside of that compost pile, and I'm making a judgment call, which you're going to make too. You're going to look at it and see how finely broken down it is. Now at this point, you can go ahead and add it to your garden, or you can let it break down even further to get the desired result that you want. At the end of the day, adding compost is probably one of the best things that you can do in order to increase the productivity of your garden. As we have been discussing, compost adds nutrition and loads of biological life to your soil that are going to continue to break things down inside your soil and make nutrients more available for your plants. This is going to create an environment that the plants are going to absolutely love. They're going to grow bigger and healthier root systems, and they're going to provide you fruits and vegetables that are going to be so much healthier and nutritious for you as well. If you love this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel, because every single month we're putting out different types of videos in order for you to be successful creating your own urban and backyard homestead. Again, my name is Phil from Earth Nails and Tails, and I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something valuable along the way. I just wanted to provide you with the tools necessary for you to be able to maintain your own hot compost pile and create your own beautiful black gold at home. So for those of you that stuck around till the end, thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.